The afternoon sun hung low in the sky as 16-year-old Tiana walked home from her after-school tutoring program. The autumn air carried a slight chill, rustling the colorful leaves that lined the quiet suburban streets. She adjusted her backpack heavy with textbooks and checked the time on her phone. Her mom would be expecting her soon for dinner. Tiana had taken this route home countless times before. The neighborhood, with its well-kept lawns and tree-lined sidewalks, had been her home for the past 3 years since her family moved there. She hummed softly to herself, thinking about the math test she had just aced and the congratulatory text her dad had sent her when she shared the news. 2 streets away from her house, Tiana noticed a police cruiser slowly rolling down the road in her direction. She didn't think much of it at first. Police cars occasionally patrolled the area, but this one seemed to be deliberately slowing down as it approached her. The car eventually came to a stop just ahead and 2 officers stepped out, their eyes fixed on her. "Afternoon," the taller officer said, his hand resting casually on his belt. The name tag on his uniform read Officer Daniels. "Where are you headed today?" Tiana offered a polite smile, though something about their approach made her uneasy. "Just walking home from school, sir. I live a couple blocks from here." The second officer, shorter with a stockier build, circled around to stand slightly behind her. His name tag read Officer Wilson. "You live around here?" he asked, his tone implying doubt. "Yes, sir. On Maple Street. I've lived there for 3 years now." Tiana kept her voice steady, remembering her parents' many conversations about how to interact with police. Officer Daniels looked her up and down. "We haven't seen you around before. Got some ID on you?" Tiana's heart began to beat faster, but she worked to keep her expression neutral. "I'm 16, sir. I have my school ID." She reached slowly for her backpack. "Hold on," Officer Wilson said sharply. "What's in the bag?" "Empty it out," Tiana blinked in surprise. "It's just my school stuff. Books, notebooks, my calculator." "This is a nice neighborhood," Officer Daniels cut in. "We've had reports of kids coming through, casing houses. You understand why we need to check, right?" A lump formed in Tiana's throat. She knew exactly what he was implying. "I'm just walking home from school," she repeated. "My parents are expecting me." "Your parents live here?" "In this neighborhood?" Officer Wilson exchanged a look with his partner that made Tiana's stomach tighten. "Yes," she said firmly. "My dad is a heart doctor at Central Hospital and my mom teaches at the university." Officer Daniels smirked. "That's quite a story. Look, why don't you just tell us where you're really going? Save us all some time." Tiana felt a rush of anger alongside her growing fear. "I told you the truth. I live on Maple Street with my family. You can call my parents if you don't believe me." "How about we give them a call from the station instead?" Officer Wilson suggested, his hand moving to his handcuffs. "Until we verify your story." A few yards away, an older woman stepped out onto her porch, watching the interaction with concern. Mrs. Chen had lived in the neighborhood for decades and often waved to Tiana on her walks home. Today she stood with her phone in hand, her eyes narrowed as she observed the officer's behavior. "I haven't done anything wrong," Tiana said, her voice beginning to shake despite her efforts to stay calm. "Please just let me call my parents." "Put your hands where I can see them," Officer Daniels instructed, ignoring her request. "We're going to need to search that bag." Tiana slowly raised her hands, fighting back tears of frustration. "You don't have any reason to search my bag. I'm just walking home." "Actually, we have every right when there's reasonable suspicion," Officer Wilson countered. "And a kid like you in this neighborhood? That's suspicious. A kid like me?" Tiana repeated, unable to hold back. "What does that mean?" Neither officer answered directly. Instead, Officer Daniels gestured for her backpack. "Hand it over, now." Across the street, Mr. Rodriguez had stepped out of his house too, coffee mug in hand. He stood on his lawn, watching intently. 2 houses down, the Patel family's teenage son had stopped washing his car to observe the scene unfolding. Tiana reluctantly slipped off her backpack, hands trembling slightly. As she held it out, Officer Daniels snatched it roughly. "Careful with my laptop, please," Tiana said as he unzipped the main compartment and began pulling items out. Her notebooks tumbled onto the sidewalk, followed by her pencil case, which burst open on impact, scattering pens and highlighters. "Should be more careful with your things," Officer Wilson commented with a smirk as Tiana bent down to gather her belongings. "Stand up." Officer Daniels barked suddenly. "I didn't say you could move." Tiana froze, then slowly straightened, leaving her school supplies scattered on the ground. "Sir, I haven't done anything wrong." "This isn't fair." "Life isn't fair, sweetheart," Officer Wilson replied. "Lesson you might as well learn now." By this point, Mrs. Chen had made her way down her driveway and was approaching slowly, phone visibly recording in her hand. Mr. Rodriguez had also moved closer, standing at the edge of his property line with arms crossed. "What seems to be the problem here, officers?" Mrs. Chen called out, her voice firm despite her small stature. Officer Daniels barely glanced her way. "Police business, ma'am. Please step back." "I've known this young lady for years," Mrs. Chen continued, undeterred. "She lives in this neighborhood. Her family lives on Maple." "Ma'am, we need you to step back," Officer Wilson repeated more forcefully. "This doesn't concern you." But Mrs. Chen stood her ground. "I'm a retired school teacher and I know this girl. She walks by my house every day after school." Tiana felt a surge of relief at the woman's intervention, but it was short-lived. "With all due respect, ma'am, we have a job to do," Officer Daniels said dismissively. "And right now that job involves questioning this individual who doesn't seem to belong here." The words stung Tiana deeply. "Doesn't belong here. 3 years in this neighborhood, and these officers had decided in minutes that she was an outsider, a threat. I have every right to be here," Tiana said, her voice stronger now despite the slight quaver. "And you have no right to treat me this way." Officer Wilson stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You want to talk about rights? How about respecting the authority of a police officer? How about answering questions truthfully instead of giving us attitude?" "I have answered truthfully," Tiana insisted. "I live on Maple Street with my parents. I'm walking home from school." That's it. By now, more neighbors had emerged from their homes. The Patels were standing at the edge of their driveway. Mr. Rodriguez had moved to stand near Mrs. Chen. An older gentleman that Tiana recognized as Judge Rivera from 2 blocks over was making his way toward them, leaning on his cane. Officer Daniels had dumped the contents of Tiana's backpack onto the hood of the police car and was rifling through her belongings. He held up her school ID. "Tiana Johnson," he read aloud, then looked at her with narrowed eyes. "This says you attend Franklin High. That's clear across town." "Yes," Tiana nodded. "I'm in the STEM program there. It's a specialized program. And you expect us to believe you walk all the way from there every day?" Officer Wilson asked skeptically. "No, I take the bus most of the way," Tiana explained, trying to keep her voice level. "I get off at Oakwood and Pine, then walk the rest of the way. It's about 15 minutes, Officer Daniels snorted. "Convenient story." "It's not a story, it's the truth," Tiana insisted, frustration building. "You can call my parents. My phone is right there in my bag." "Oh, we'll get to that," Officer Wilson said. "But first we're going to need you to empty your pockets." Judge Rivera had reached them by now. "Officers," he said, his deep voice carrying authority despite his age, "may I ask what probable cause you have for searching this young woman?" Officer Daniels turned, clearly annoyed by another interruption. "Sir, this is a police matter." "I'm well aware of what constitutes a police matter," Judge Rivera cut in smoothly. "I served on the bench for 30 years. Now I'll ask again, what is your probable cause?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed Officer Daniels' face, but he quickly recovered. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area. This individual matches the description." "What description would that be?" Mrs. Chen asked pointedly. Officer Wilson shot her a warning look. "Ma'am, I've already asked you to step back." Tiana watched as more of her neighbors gathered. Some had phones out recording. Others whispered among themselves. She felt a mix of emotions: embarrassment at being the center of attention, fear of what the officers might do next, but also a growing sense of support from the community around her. "I just want to go home," Tiana said quietly, looking Officer Daniels in the eye. "Please, we're not done here," he replied coldly. "Not until we're satisfied." "Satisfied of what exactly?" Judge Rivera pressed. "That this young woman is guilty of walking home from school? Of living in this neighborhood?" "We're doing our job," Officer Wilson snapped. "Keeping this neighborhood safe." "Safe from teenage girls with backpacks full of homework?" Mr. Rodriguez spoke up, his voice heavy with sarcasm. "Very heroic." Officer Daniels turned to face the growing crowd. "All of you need to disperse now. This is an official police investigation." "Investigation of what crime?" Judge Rivera asked calmly. "Because from where I'm standing it looks like harassment." Tiana's phone, sitting atop her scattered belongings on the police car hood, began to ring. The screen lit up with a photo of her smiling parents and the word Dad. "That's my father calling," Tiana said, reaching for the phone. "Don't move," Officer Wilson ordered sharply, causing her to freeze in place. The tension in the air was palpable as Officer Daniels picked up the phone, glanced at the screen, and then silenced the call. "Please," Tiana said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let me talk to my dad." For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the gentle rustle of autumn leaves blowing across the pavement. Then somewhere in the distance, another police siren wailed, heading their way. The first chapter of Tiana's ordeal was just beginning. The phone continued to buzz on the hood of the police car, the screen lighting up with repeated calls from Tiana's father. Officer Daniels glanced at it with annoyance before finally turning it face down. "Look," Tiana said, trying to keep her voice steady. "That's my dad calling. He's probably worried because I'm late. Please just let me answer and explain what's happening." "We'll handle the explanations," Officer Wilson said, stepping closer to her. "If that really is your father, we have some questions for him too." Tiana felt her chest tighten. The situation was spiraling out of control and she couldn't understand why. She'd done nothing wrong, just walked home from school like she did every day. Mrs. Chen moved forward, her phone still recording. "Officers, this has gone far enough. Either charge this girl with something or let her go home." Officer Daniels turned toward the elderly woman, his posture stiffening. "Ma'am, I've asked you multiple times to step back. This is police business. It's public property," Judge Rivera stated calmly from where he stood, "and we're concerned citizens observing police activity. Nothing illegal about that." The crowd of neighbors had grown. The Patel family stood together near their driveway. Mr. Rodriguez had been joined by his wife. Several other families from nearby houses had gathered at a distance, watching with worried expressions. Nearly all had phones out recording the scene. Officer Wilson noticed the growing audience and the many cameras pointed their way. A flash of unease crossed his face before he turned back to Tiana. "Empty your pockets," he ordered, his voice harder now. "I already showed you my school ID," Tiana protested. "What else do you need to see?" "I'm not going to ask again," Officer Wilson warned, his hand moving to rest on his belt near his taser. The gesture wasn't lost on Tiana or the watching neighbors. A murmur ran through the crowd. "She's just a kid," someone called out. "This isn't right," said another voice. Tiana slowly reached into her jacket pockets, hands trembling slightly. "I only have some lip balm and a hair tie," she said, pulling out the items to show them. Officer Daniels snatched them from her hand, examining them before tossing them onto the car hood with her other belongings. "Pants pockets too." Tiana reached into her jeans pockets and pulled out a small package of tissues and a folded receipt from the convenience store where she'd bought a snack after school. Officer Wilson took the receipt, unfolding it and scrutinizing it. "What were you doing at Quick Stop?" he asked suspiciously. "Buying a granola bar," Tiana answered, gesturing to the receipt. "It says it right there. I was hungry after tutoring." "Turn around," Officer Daniels instructed suddenly. "Hands against the car." A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. Judge Rivera took a step forward, his expression grave. "Now wait just a minute," he began, but Officer Daniels cut him off. "Sir, step back or you will be interfering with police procedure." Tiana's heart raced as she turned slowly toward the cruiser. "Please," she said, her voice barely audible. "I haven't done anything wrong." As she placed her palms against the cool metal of the police car, she caught sight of her reflection in the window. Tears had begun to stream down her face despite her efforts to remain composed. Behind her she could see the officers exchanging glances, the neighbors with their phones raised, the growing tension in the air. "This is completely unnecessary," Mrs. Chen protested loudly. "She's a child." Officer Wilson turned toward the woman, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Ma'am, one more word and you'll be joining her for obstruction. Are you threatening a 70-year-old woman for speaking up?" Mr. Rodriguez called out, his voice rising with indignation. "Is that how you serve and protect?" The situation was rapidly deteriorating. Tiana could feel it. The anger from the officers, the outrage from her neighbors, and her own fear threatening to overwhelm her. Suddenly, a new police cruiser pulled up to the scene, lights flashing but siren silent. A heavy-set officer with graying hair stepped out, surveying the scene with a furrowed brow. The name on his badge read Officer Bryant. "What's going on here, Daniels?" he asked, approaching the group. Officer Daniels straightened up. Possible suspicious activity. Subject was walking through the neighborhood. Couldn't provide adequate explanation for her presence. Officer Bryant looked at Tiana, still facing the car with her hands pressed against it, tears streaming down her face. Then he glanced at the gathered neighbors, many recording with their phones. "This subject?" he asked, sounding skeptical. "The teenage girl? She claims to live here," Officer Wilson jumped in. "But we have reason to believe she does live here," Mrs. Chen interrupted firmly. "2 blocks down on Maple. Her father is Dr. Johnson at Central Hospital. Her mother teaches at the university. They've been here 3 years." Officer Bryant's expression changed subtly as he looked more closely at Tiana. "Are you Tiana Johnson?" Tiana nodded, still facing the car. "Yes, sir." "Your dad treated my wife last year," Officer Bryant said, his tone softening. "After her accident. Good man." He turned to Officers Daniels and Wilson. "What probable cause did you have to stop her?" The 2 officers exchanged glances. "We've had reports of suspicious individuals in the area," Officer Daniels said. "She matched the profile." "What profile would that be?" Judge Rivera asked pointedly from where he stood. A tense silence followed the question. Officer Bryant's eyes narrowed as he looked between his colleagues and the teenage girl still positioned against their cruiser. "Tiana," Officer Bryant said gently, "you can put your hands down and turn around, slowly." Tiana lowered her arms and turned to face the officers, wiping tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Can you tell me what happened?" Officer Bryant asked. Before Tiana could respond, Officer Wilson cut in. "We were just doing our job, Bryant, securing the neighborhood. I was walking home from school," Tiana explained, her voice steadier now. "They stopped me and asked what I was doing here. I told them I live here, but they didn't believe me. They searched my backpack and wouldn't let me call my parents." Officer Bryant's expression darkened. He glanced at the scattered contents of Tiana's backpack on the hood of the car, then back at his fellow officers. "Pack up her things," he told them quietly. Now Officer Daniels hesitated. "We're not finished with—" "Yes," Officer Bryant interrupted firmly. "You are." The neighbors watched as Officer Daniels reluctantly began gathering Tiana's belongings and returning them to her backpack. Officer Wilson stood rigid, jaw clenched, clearly unhappy with this turn of events. Tiana's phone buzzed again on the car hood. Officer Bryant picked it up and handed it to her. "You should probably answer that. Your parents must be worried." With shaking hands, Tiana took the phone and answered. "Dad, I'm okay, but I'm being held by police officers on Oak Street." Her voice broke as she tried to explain the situation. While Tiana spoke with her father, Officer Bryant pulled Daniels and Wilson aside, speaking to them in hushed but intense tones. The neighbors couldn't hear what was being said, but the body language told a clear story. Bryant was not happy with what his colleagues had done. Mrs. Chen approached Tiana gently, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Are you all right, dear? Your father is coming?" Tiana nodded, still on the phone. "He's on his way," she whispered, covering the mouthpiece briefly. Judge Rivera had made his way over as well, leaning heavily on his cane. "Young lady, I want you to know that what happened here was not right, and it will not be ignored." Mr. Rodriguez nodded in agreement. "We all saw everything. We all recorded it." Officer Bryant returned to Tiana after his conversation with the other officers. "Your father is coming to get you?" "Yes, sir," Tiana replied, slipping her phone into her pocket. "He should be here in a few minutes." "Good," Bryant nodded. "I'm going to wait with you until he arrives." He turned to address the gathered neighbors. "Folks, I appreciate your concern for this young lady, but the situation is under control now. You can return to your homes," but no one moved. Instead, Mrs. Chen spoke up. "With all due respect, Officer Bryant, we'll wait until Tiana's father arrives too." The officer looked like he wanted to argue but thought better of it. He simply nodded and stepped back, positioning himself between Tiana and the other 2 officers, who now stood by their cruiser, speaking quietly to each other and occasionally shooting glances at the crowd. The atmosphere remained tense as everyone waited. Tiana clutched her backpack to her chest, still fighting back tears. The neighbors formed a protective semicircle around her, offering quiet words of encouragement. "You're very brave," Mrs. Chen told her softly. "Your parents will be proud of how you handled yourself," Judge Rivera added. Tiana managed a weak smile in response. grateful for their support but still shaken by the experience. She couldn't stop replaying the officer's words in her mind. Doesn't belong here. What had they meant by that? What profile had she matched? She knew the answer, of course. They all did. But no one was saying it out loud. A few minutes later, a silver sedan came speeding down the street, pulling up sharply beside the police cruisers. Tiana's father leaped out, his face a mask of concern and anger. He spotted his daughter and rushed toward her. "Tiana!" he called out, pushing past Officer Wilson to reach her. Tiana broke down at the sight of her father, the tears she'd been holding back now flowing freely. He wrapped her in a tight embrace as she sobbed against his chest. "It's okay, baby," he murmured, stroking her hair. "I'm here now." After a moment, he gently set her aside and turned to face the officers, his expression hardening. "Which one of you thought it was appropriate to detain my 16-year-old daughter on her way home from school?" Officer Bryant stepped forward. "Dr. Johnson, I understand you're upset." "Upset doesn't begin to cover it," Tiana's father cut in, his voice controlled but filled with barely contained fury. "My daughter calls me in tears, saying she's being held by police. She's been walking this same route home for 3 years without incident. What changed today?" Officer Daniels stepped forward. "Sir, we were responding to reports of suspicious activity in the neighborhood." "Suspicious activity?" Dr. Johnson repeated incredulously. "My daughter walking home from school is suspicious. Based on what criteria exactly?" The question hung in the air unanswered. Officer Wilson shifted uncomfortably while Officer Daniels maintained his rigid posture. "Dr. Johnson," Officer Bryant said carefully, "I want to assure you that this situation will be thoroughly reviewed. These officers are wearing body cameras and their conduct today will be examined by our department." "It better be," Dr. Johnson replied firmly, "because this isn't just about my daughter. This is about how these officers are policing this community." He turned to the neighbors who had stayed to support Tiana. "Thank you all for looking out for her. I can't tell you how much that means to us." Mrs. Chen stepped forward, handing him her phone. "I recorded everything from the moment I saw them stop her. It's all here if you need it." "So did I," Mr. Rodriguez added, along with several other neighbors who nodded in agreement. Judge Rivera approached, extending his hand to Dr. Johnson. "Thomas Rivera, I live 2 blocks over. You should know that these officers were acting without probable cause. What they did was not just wrong, it was illegal." Dr. Johnson shook the judge's hand gratefully. "Thank you for saying that, and for being here for Tiana." He turned back to the officers, his gaze fixed on Daniels and Wilson. "This isn't over." "Not by a long shot." Officer Bryant nodded solemnly. "I understand, Doctor. And for what it's worth, I apologize for what happened here today." "I appreciate that," Dr. Johnson replied. "But I'm not the one who deserves the apology." He looked pointedly at his daughter, who stood quietly beside him, still clutching her backpack. Officers Daniels and Wilson remained silent, neither making any move to address Tiana directly. "That's what I thought," Dr. Johnson said, his voice heavy with disappointment. He placed an arm around Tiana's shoulders. "Come on, honey. Let's go home." As they walked toward their car, the neighbors began to disperse, some stopping briefly to offer words of support to Tiana and her father. Officer Bryant watched them go, his expression troubled, while Officers Daniels and Wilson retreated to their cruiser, speaking in hushed tones. No one noticed the small drone hovering high above the scene, its camera capturing everything that had transpired. It belonged to the high school newspaper where Tiana served as assistant editor. Her friend and fellow journalist, who had been piloting it remotely after receiving Tiana's abrupt text that she was being stopped by police, had recorded the entire incident from a perspective no handheld phone could match. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning to unfold. The Johnson family kitchen was unusually quiet that evening. Tiana sat at the island counter, pushing food around her plate, her appetite gone. Her father stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in the measured tones he used when trying to contain his anger. Her mother paced the kitchen, pausing occasionally to rest a gentle hand on Tiana's shoulder or brush a stray hair from her face. "Yes, Captain Reynolds, I understand you're busy," Dr. Johnson was saying into the phone, "but I need to speak with someone in authority about what happened to my daughter today." He paused, listening. "Tomorrow morning is not acceptable. This happened 2 hours ago to a minor." Another pause. "Fine, 9 a.m., I'll be there. And I'm bringing our attorney." He ended the call and turned to his family, exhaling slowly. The captain claims he can't meet us until tomorrow morning. Tiana's mother stopped pacing. That's ridiculous. Our daughter was racially profiled and harassed by police officers. They should be addressing this immediately. They're hoping we'll cool down overnight, Dr. Johnson replied, setting his phone on the counter. That we'll decide it's not worth pursuing. They don't know us very well then, Mrs. Johnson said, her voice firm. Tiana looked up from her untouched dinner. I keep thinking about what would have happened if the neighbors hadn't come out. If Officer Bryant hadn't shown up. Her voice trembled slightly. They were getting ready to handcuff me, Dad, for walking home. Dr. Johnson moved to his daughter's side, placing his hands on her shoulders. Listen to me, Tiana. What happened today was wrong. It was unjust, and it was not your fault. Not one bit of it. I know, Tiana whispered. But it still happened, and it can happen again. To me, to my friends, to anyone who looks like us. Mrs. Johnson joined them, creating a family huddle around the kitchen island. That's why we're not letting this go. That's why we're going to fight. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Dr. Johnson glanced at his watch with a frown. Are we expecting someone? That might be Lee, Tiana said. I texted him about what happened. He's the one who sent the drone. Dr. Johnson raised an eyebrow. Drone? Tiana nodded. For the school newspaper. We've been working on a project about community policing. When I texted him that I was being stopped, he flew the newspaper's drone over to document it. Her parents exchanged surprised looks as Mrs. Johnson went to answer the door. Moments later, she returned with not just Lee but Judge Rivera, Mrs. Chen, and the Rodriguez family. I hope you don't mind us coming by, Judge Rivera said, leaning on his cane. We wanted to check on Tiana. And to discuss next steps, Mrs. Chen added, holding up a thumb drive. I've compiled all the video footage from the neighbors who were present today. Lee, a lanky boy with glasses and a serious expression, stepped forward with his laptop. And I have the aerial footage from the drone. It captured everything, including what the officers were saying to each other when they thought no one could hear them. Dr. Johnson ushered everyone into the living room, where they gathered around as Lee connected his laptop to the television. The screen filled with a bird's-eye view of the confrontation, the image surprisingly clear despite being shot from above. I installed a high-definition camera with directional microphones for our documentary, Lee explained as he navigated to the beginning of the footage. It picks up audio really well even from a distance. He pressed play, and they watched as the patrol car first approached Tiana. The aerial perspective showed clearly how the officers had positioned themselves to intimidate her. One in front, one behind, boxing her in against the car, but it was the audio that proved most revealing. As Officer Bryant pulled up and drew Officers Daniels and Wilson aside for a private conversation, the drone's microphones captured their exchange. What the hell are you two doing? Officer Bryant's voice came through clearly. That's Dr. Johnson's daughter. He saved my wife's life last year. How are we supposed to know that? Officer Daniels replied defensively. She doesn't look like she belongs in this neighborhood. What's that supposed to mean? Bryant demanded. Officer Wilson's response was quieter but still audible. Come on, Bryant. You know what we mean. This neighborhood is changing and not for the better. We're just trying to keep the property values up. By harassing a teenager walking home from school, Bryant's disgust was evident. Your body cams are on, by the way. Every word. The room fell silent as Lee paused the video. Tiana's parents looked at each other, their expressions a mix of anger and vindication. Property values, Mrs. Johnson repeated softly, shaking her head, as if our presence somehow devalues the neighborhood. Judge Rivera cleared his throat. This footage, combined with the body camera recordings, provides clear evidence of biased policing. It's actionable, Dr. Johnson. I've already called our attorney, Dr. Johnson replied. We're meeting with the police captain tomorrow morning. Mr. Rodriguez leaned forward. You should know that this isn't an isolated incident. My son was pulled over 3 times in the first month after we moved here. Always the same officers. Always with some vague explanation about routine checks. Mrs. Chen nodded in agreement. And my grandson was questioned in the park last summer. They said he matched the description of someone breaking into cars. He was playing basketball with friends. This is a pattern, Judge Rivera said gravely, and it needs to be addressed at a systemic level. Tiana had been quiet, listening to the adults discuss what had happened. Now she spoke up. I want to write about this for the school paper. Not just about what happened to me, but about all of it. The pattern. The impact. Lee nodded enthusiastically. We've been gathering data for months for our project. Traffic stops, police interactions, response times across different neighborhoods. The numbers tell a pretty clear story. Are you sure, honey? Mrs. Johnson asked her daughter gently. Going public with this will draw a lot of attention. Tiana met her mother's concerned gaze. I'm sure, Mom, if I stay quiet, nothing changes. And it will just happen to someone else. Dr. Johnson looked at his daughter with pride. Then we'll support you. All the way. The conversation continued into the evening, plans taking shape. Judge Rivera offered legal insights. Mrs. Chen suggested community organizing strategies from her years as an activist. The Rodriguez family proposed a neighborhood watch program to document police activities. Lee and Tiana outlined their journalistic approach. By the time their visitors left, a comprehensive strategy had emerged. One that went beyond just addressing the incident with Tiana to tackle the broader issues of biased policing in their community. As her parents cleared the dishes from the hastily arranged refreshments they'd offered their guests, Tiana's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Hey, this is Zoe Bryant. My dad told me what happened today. I go to North High, but I've seen you at debate tournaments. I'm really sorry about what those officers did. Dad says they've been problems for a while. If you need any info from the inside, let me know. My dad's willing to help. Tiana stared at the message in surprise before showing it to her parents. Officer Bryant's daughter, she explained. She says her dad wants to help. Dr. Johnson read the message, his expression thoughtful. An ally within the department could be valuable, especially a veteran officer like Bryant. Do you think we can trust him? Mrs. Johnson asked cautiously. He did step in today when he saw what was happening, Tiana pointed out, and he made sure to mention their body cameras were recording. Dr. Johnson nodded slowly. Let's see what he has to say. Tell Zoe we'd like to talk to her father. Tiana typed a reply, feeling a small spark of hope for the first time since the incident. Change wouldn't come easily, but perhaps it was possible. The next morning, dressed in a crisp suit usually reserved for hospital board meetings, Dr. Johnson drove to the police station. Tiana and her mother followed in a separate car, along with their family attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Powell who specialized in civil rights cases. They arrived to find the station unusually busy for a weekday morning. News vans lined the street outside, reporters setting up cameras and checking microphones. What's going on? Tiana asked, watching the media activity with confusion. Ms. Powell checked her phone. It seems the story broke overnight. Someone leaked the drone footage to the local news stations. Tiana's eyes widened. Lee wouldn't have done that without telling me. It might not have been Lee, Mrs. Johnson suggested. Remember, Mrs. Chen compiled footage from all the neighbors. Any one of them could have sent it to the media. They made their way through the crowd of reporters, declining to comment despite the barrage of questions thrown their way. Inside the station, the atmosphere was tense. Officers moved about with stiff postures, eyeing the Johnson family and their attorney with wary expressions. Captain Reynolds met them in the lobby, his face a careful mask of professional courtesy. Dr. Johnson, Mrs. Johnson, thank you for coming. I was hoping we could speak privately in my office. Actually, Ms. Powell interjected smoothly. We've been contacted by several other families with similar experiences. They're waiting for us in the community room as you arranged. The captain's mask slipped momentarily, revealing surprise and annoyance. I didn't arrange any such meeting. I did, came a voice from behind them. Officer Bryant approached, accompanied by a middle-aged woman in civilian clothes who carried herself with unmistakable authority. These families deserve to be heard, Captain, and Chief Washington agrees. The woman extended her hand to Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson, I'm Chief Washington. I cut my vacation short when I saw the news this morning. I'd like to personally assure you that a full investigation into this incident is already underway. Captain Reynolds looked like he'd swallowed something sour but quickly composed himself. Of course, Chief. I was just about to inform the Johnsons of our internal review process. Chief Washington fixed him with a stern look. The time for internal reviews has passed, Captain. This department has received 3 civil rights complaints in the past year alone, all dismissed after your internal reviews. That ends today. She turned back to the Johnson family. Please come with me. I'd like to hear directly from Tiana about what happened yesterday. They followed Chief Washington to the community room, where several other families were indeed waiting, including the Rodriguezes and other neighbors Tiana recognized from her community. Officer Bryant took a position by the door, his presence making a clear statement to his fellow officers. Before we begin, Chief Washington addressed the group. I want to make something absolutely clear. What happened to Tiana Johnson yesterday was unacceptable. The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation, but I suspect this is not an isolated incident, which is why I wanted to hear from all of you today. One by one, families shared their experiences. A pattern quickly emerged: the same officers, the same types of baseless stops, the same thinly veiled racial undertones. Chief Washington took notes, asking occasional clarifying questions, her expression growing grimmer with each story. When everyone had spoken, she stood and addressed the room. I want to thank you all for your courage in coming forward. What you've described points to a serious problem within my department. I take full responsibility for not addressing it sooner. She turned to face Tiana directly. Especially to you, Tiana. No young person should ever experience what you did yesterday. I am deeply sorry. Tiana nodded, caught off guard by the direct apology. Thank you. But apologies are not enough, Chief Washington continued. Actions matter more than words. She outlined immediate steps: an external review of the department's practices, community oversight of disciplinary decisions, mandatory bias training for all officers, and a complete overhaul of the complaint system. As the meeting concluded, reporters were still gathered outside, their numbers having grown. Chief Washington approached the Johnson family once more. The media is asking for a statement, she said. I'm going to address them shortly. I'd understand if you wanted to avoid the cameras, but your perspective would be valuable. Tiana looked at her parents, then at Ms. Powell, who gave a small nod of approval. I'll speak, Tiana said, surprising herself with her own certainty. People need to hear what happened from me. Her father squeezed her shoulder. Are you sure? Yes, Tiana replied firmly. This isn't just about me anymore. Together, they walked out to face the cameras. Chief Washington made a brief statement first, outlining the facts of the incident and the steps being taken to address it. Then she introduced Tiana. Taking a deep breath, Tiana stepped forward. The cameras focused on her, microphones thrust in her direction. For a moment, the weight of all those eyes made her hesitate. Then she remembered the feeling of being pressed against the police car, of being made to feel like an outsider in her own neighborhood. My name is Tiana Johnson, she began, her voice clear and steady. Yesterday I was walking home from school when 2 police officers stopped me. They searched my belongings, refused to let me call my parents, and treated me like a criminal. Not because of anything I did, but because they decided I didn't belong in my own neighborhood. As she spoke, her confidence grew. She described the incident without embellishment, letting the facts speak for themselves. She acknowledged Officer Bryant's intervention and the support of her neighbors, and she ended with a call for change that extended beyond her own experience. This isn't just about one incident or 2 officers, she concluded. It's about a system that allows this to happen. It's about the countless others who've faced the same treatment, but didn't have neighbors recording or a drone overhead. We all deserve better. And together I believe we can make that happen. As she stepped back, the reporters erupted with questions. Chief Washington managed the press conference from there, fielding inquiries with direct answers that acknowledged the department's failings while emphasizing her commitment to reform. Officer Bryant approached the Johnson family as they made their way back to their cars. That was brave, he told Tiana. Speaking out like that. Thank you for stepping in yesterday, she replied. And for organizing today's meeting. He shook his head. Don't thank me. I should have spoken up about those 2 a long time ago. Seen the signs but looked the other way. That stops now. As they drove home, Tiana's phone buzzed continuously with notifications. The video of her statement was already spreading across social media. Friends from school, teachers, even strangers were sending messages of support. Lee texted that their school newspaper's website had crashed from too much traffic after they posted her story. Are you okay? Her mother asked, noticing Tiana's overwhelmed expression as she scrolled through her phone. Tiana looked up, considering the question carefully. I'm not sure, she admitted. But I think I will be. Something important happened today, didn't it? Her father met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Yes, it did. Something very important, and it's just the beginning. As they pulled into their driveway, Tiana noticed a small package on their front porch. Inside was a handmade card signed by all the neighbors who had stood with her yesterday, along with a delicate silver bracelet. The card read simply, "Your community stands with you, always." Tiana slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, a tangible reminder that she was not alone in this fight. The road ahead would not be easy, but today had shown her the power of speaking truth to power, and the difference it could make when a community united around justice. The video spread like wildfire. By the evening news cycle, Tiana's story had moved from local coverage to national headlines. Her composed, articulate account of what had happened resonated with viewers across the country. Social media exploded with hashtags supporting her and condemning the officer's actions. Tiana watched it unfold from her bedroom, alternating between amazement and anxiety as her phone buzzed nonstop with notifications. Friends, classmates, and complete strangers reached out with messages of support. News outlets requested interviews. Civil rights organizations offered resources and assistance. "How are you holding up?" her mother asked, leaning against the doorframe of Tiana's room. Tiana set her phone down with a sigh. "It's overwhelming. I never expected all this attention." "You spoke your truth," Mrs. Johnson said, sitting beside her daughter on the bed. "And it touched people because it's not just your truth. It's a reality that too many have experienced." The police department called again, Tiana's father announced, appearing in the doorway. "The formal disciplinary hearing for Officers Daniels and Wilson is scheduled for next week. They want you to testify." Tiana nodded slowly. "I'll do it. You don't have to," her mother assured her. "Ms. Powell says the video evidence is compelling enough." "I want to," Tiana insisted. "I need to look them in the eye and tell my story. Not just for me, but for everyone who's been through something similar." Her parents exchanged proud glances. Their daughter had always been determined, but this situation had revealed a strength in her they hadn't fully appreciated before. "There's something else," Dr. Johnson added, his expression more serious. "The body cam footage has been released to the media. It's illuminating." He pulled up a news site on his tablet and handed it to Tiana. The headline read, "Body cam reveals officers discussed keeping neighborhood white before detaining black teen." Tiana felt her stomach clench as she read the article. The body cam footage had captured a conversation between Officers Daniels and Wilson before they approached her. They had explicitly discussed targeting outsiders who didn't fit the neighborhood's traditional demographic. "I always knew," Tiana said quietly, handing the tablet back to her father. "But hearing them actually say it makes it impossible for anyone to deny," her mother finished. The footage had transformed the narrative. What some might have dismissed as an overreaction or misunderstanding was now undeniably revealed as racially motivated harassment. The officer's own words condemned them. Later that evening, the Johnson family gathered in their living room with Judge Rivera, Mrs. Chen, and several other neighbors who had witnessed the incident. Lee had joined them as well, bringing updated information about how the story was spreading online. "The body cam footage has been viewed over 2 million times, he reported, scrolling through analytics on his laptop, "and the drone video is approaching 3 million. People are demanding action." "The mayor called an emergency meeting of the city council for tomorrow," Judge Rivera added. "I've been asked to speak about what I witnessed." Mrs. Chen nodded. "I've been invited as well, and I understand Chief Washington will be presenting a comprehensive reform plan." "What about the officers?" Tiana asked. "What will happen to them?" Judge Rivera's expression turned grim. "With the body cam evidence, their dismissal is almost certain, but there may be more serious consequences. The district attorney is reviewing the case for possible civil rights violations." "The real question," Dr. Johnson said, "is whether this will lead to meaningful change beyond just these two officers. The problem is systemic. That's why we can't let this moment pass," Mrs. Chen replied firmly. "We need to use this momentum to push for real reforms." Lee looked up from his laptop. "We've started a petition demanding community oversight of the police department. It's gained 10,000 signatures in the last 3 hours." Tiana listened as they discussed strategies, feeling both inspired by their commitment and daunted by the scope of the challenge. This had begun with her personal experience, but it had quickly grown into something much larger. "I'd like to speak at the city council meeting too," she said suddenly. Interrupting the conversation, all eyes turned to her. Are you sure, honey? Her mother asked. You've already been through so much, Tiana nodded. I'm at the center of this story. People are listening right now because of what happened to me. I need to use that platform while I have it. No one argued. They recognized the determination in her voice. The next day, City Hall was packed beyond capacity. An overflow crowd gathered outside, watching the proceedings on hastily erected screens. News crews positioned their cameras strategically around the chamber. Mayor Reynolds called the meeting to order, his usual confident demeanor notably subdued. We face a moment of reckoning in our community, he began. The disturbing footage we've all seen demands a response. I've invited Chief Washington to present her plan for addressing the issues within our police department. Chief Washington approached the podium, her uniform crisp, her expression resolute. Thank you, Mayor. What we witnessed in those videos represents a failure not just of 2 officers, but of leadership, training, and accountability within our department. She outlined a comprehensive reform plan, an independent civilian review board with real disciplinary authority, mandatory body cameras with automatic uploading to prevent tampering, revised use of force policies, enhanced bias training, and a complete overhaul of the complaint process. These changes are just the beginning, she concluded. The culture within law enforcement must evolve, and that starts with acknowledging our failures and actively working to rebuild trust with the communities we serve. One by one, witnesses to Tiana's detention addressed the council. Judge Rivera spoke about the legal violations he had observed. Mrs. Chen described how the officers had dismissed and threatened her when she tried to intervene. Mr. Rodriguez recounted similar experiences his family had endured. When it was Tiana's turn, a hush fell over the chamber. She approached the podium, adjusting the microphone to her height. Despite her nervousness, her voice remained steady. My name is Tiana Johnson. 4 days ago, I was walking home from school when Officers Daniels and Wilson stopped me. They questioned my right to be in my own neighborhood. They searched my belongings without cause. They refused to let me contact my parents. They made me feel like a criminal in a place where I should feel safe. She paused, looking directly at the council members. But this isn't just about what happened to me. It's about a pattern that affects too many people in our community. It's about the assumptions that led those officers to see me as suspicious simply because of how I look. It's about a system that has allowed these attitudes to persist. Tiana glanced down at her notes, then set them aside. I don't want revenge. I want change. Real, lasting change that ensures no one else has to experience what I did. The reforms Chief Washington has proposed are a start, but they'll only work if there's a genuine commitment to implementing them. We'll be watching, and we'll hold you accountable. The chamber erupted in applause as she returned to her seat. Her parents squeezed her hands, their eyes shining with pride. The meeting continued for hours with dozens of community members sharing their experiences and perspectives. The council voted unanimously to adopt Chief Washington's reform plan, with additional funding for implementation and a tight timeline for results. As the Johnson family left City Hall, they were approached by a man Tiana didn't recognize. He introduced himself as David Wilson, Officer Wilson's brother. I wanted to apologize, he said, visibly uncomfortable but determined. What my brother did to you was inexcusable. Our family is ashamed. Dr. Johnson regarded him warily. Your brother should be the one apologizing. I know, David agreed, and I hope someday he will. But right now he's angry and defensive. He doesn't see what he did wrong. He turned to Tiana. I just wanted you to know that his views aren't shared by all of us. And watching you speak today, it made me realize how much work I still need to do in my own thinking. Tiana nodded, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected encounter. Thank you for saying that. As David walked away, Mrs. Johnson wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders. How do you feel? Complicated, Tiana admitted. I'm glad things are changing, but it shouldn't have taken all this to make it happen. Over the next few days, developments came rapidly. The police department officially terminated Officers Daniels and Wilson. The district attorney announced an investigation into potential civil rights charges. The mayor established a task force on equitable policing, inviting Tiana to serve as a youth representative. News outlets continued to request interviews, which Tiana accepted selectively, always focusing the conversation on systemic change rather than her personal ordeal. Civil rights organizations reached out to offer support and resources for her advocacy work. A week after the city council meeting, Tiana received an unexpected visitor at school. During lunch period, the main office paged her to come to the conference room. There she found Officer Bryant waiting. "Sorry to interrupt your school day," he said as she entered. "I wanted to update you privately before the news breaks." "What news?" Tiana asked, taking a seat across from him. Bryant leaned forward, lowering his voice despite them being alone. "We found a pattern. Daniels and Wilson weren't just randomly targeting people they thought didn't belong. They were systematically harassing residents in changing neighborhoods. And it goes back years. How did you find this out?" "After your incident, I started digging into their record, looking at every stop, every complaint. The pattern was clear once I knew what to look for. But here's the thing. Their supervisors should have caught this years ago." "Captain Reynolds?" Tiana guessed. Bryant nodded grimly. "Among others. There's evidence they buried complaints, especially from certain neighborhoods. That's why the external review team is now investigating the entire command structure." "Will there be more dismissals?" "Almost certainly. The department is about to undergo the biggest shakeup in its history." He hesitated before continuing. "I wanted to thank you, Tiana. Your courage in speaking out. It's forcing changes that were long overdue." Tiana absorbed this information, feeling a complex mix of vindication and sadness. "It shouldn't have taken this long." "No," Bryant agreed. "It shouldn't have. And that's on us, the officers who saw problems but didn't speak up loudly enough." After Officer Bryant left, Tiana returned to class, her mind processing everything he had shared. The system was being forced to change, but at what cost? How many people had suffered before their voices were finally heard? That evening, as she worked on homework, her phone buzzed with a text from Lee. "Turn on Channel 8 now." Tiana grabbed the remote and switched on her bedroom TV. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "Police Captain Reynolds resigns amid misconduct allegations." The report detailed how an internal investigation had uncovered evidence that Captain Reynolds had systematically dismissed complaints against certain officers, particularly those involving alleged racial bias. The reporter mentioned that this development came in the wake of the Johnson incident, showing a clip of Tiana speaking at the city council meeting. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Judge Rivera. "Have you seen the news?" he asked when she answered. "Just now," Tiana replied. "Officer Bryant came to my school today. He hinted something big was coming." "This is just the beginning," Judge Rivera told her. "The mayor called me an hour ago. They're creating a special commission to review all dismissed complaints from the past 5 years. They want me to chair it." "That's amazing," Tiana said sincerely. "Will it make a difference?" "It already has," the judge replied. "People who are afraid to speak up are coming forward now. They see that their voices might actually be heard this time." After they hung up, Tiana sat on her bed, contemplating everything that had happened since that afternoon walk home from school. Her life had changed in ways she never could have anticipated. Her voice had become part of something much larger than herself. She opened her laptop and began typing. The school newspaper had given her a regular column to document the ongoing reforms and their impact. She had titled it simply, "Accountability." "1 week ago," she wrote, "I was detained by police officers while walking home from school. Today, those officers have been fired, their supervisors are under investigation, and our city has committed to reforming its approach to policing." But the real test isn't what happens in the spotlight of public attention. It's what happens when the cameras leave and the headlines fade. Real change isn't measured in policies or promises, but in the daily experiences of every person in our community. And that change requires all of us. Not just to speak up when injustice happens to us, but to stand up when it happens to others. This isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning. She posted the column, then opened her textbook to study for tomorrow's exam. Life continued, even as the world around her transformed. And somewhere in that balance, between the ordinary routine of a high school student and the extraordinary role she had found herself playing in her community's reckoning with injustice, Tiana was discovering her own power to shape the future. 3 months had passed since that fateful afternoon when Tiana was stopped on her way home from school. The summer heat had settled over the city, bringing with it a languid, pace that contrasted sharply with the whirlwind of changes that continued to unfold in the wake of what had come to be known simply as the incident. Tiana sat in the shade of an oak tree in the community park, laptop balanced on her knees as she put the finishing touches on her latest column. The school year had ended, but her writing continued through the newspaper's online summer edition. Her column had developed a following that extended far beyond the student body, with community members and even national civil rights advocates among her regular readers. "Still working?" Lee asked, dropping onto the grass beside her. He'd been her steadfast ally throughout the past months, helping to document developments and providing technical assistance for the community oversight committee that had been established. "Just wrapping up," Tiana replied, making a final edit before hitting send. "The quarterly report on police reforms is being released tomorrow. I wanted to provide some context before the official numbers come out." "And?" Lee prompted. "What's the verdict?" Tiana closed her laptop with a thoughtful expression. "Mixed. Some real progress in certain areas. Complaints are being processed more transparently. The new Civilian Review Board has actual teeth, and the demographic data on stops and searches shows improvement. But there's still resistance from within the department. Change is happening, but it's not uniform." Lee nodded, unsurprised. "Rome wasn't built in a day." "No, but we can't let them drag their feet either," Tiana countered. "Not when people's lives and dignity are at stake." Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Meeting starting soon. Are you coming?" "We should head over," Tiana told Lee, packing up her things. "The Community Safety Committee is reviewing the new training protocols today." They walked together toward the community center, passing neighbors who waved or called out greetings. Tiana had become something of a local celebrity, though the attention made her uncomfortable. She preferred to redirect focus to the issues rather than herself. Inside the community center, the meeting room was already filling up. Chief Washington stood at the front, engaged in conversation with Judge Rivera. Dr. Johnson was reviewing documents with Mrs. Chen and several other committee members. Officer Bryant, recently promoted to training coordinator, arranged chairs with a group of community volunteers. "There she is," Mrs. Chen called out when she spotted Tiana. "Our fearless watchdog." Tiana smiled as she joined them. "Just doing my part." "Your column last week about the recruitment initiatives was excellent," Chief Washington said, approaching their group. "It's already generating more diverse applicants for the academy." "I'm glad to hear that," Tiana replied, "though I still think the screening process needs strengthening. We don't just need officers who look like the community. We need officers who understand and respect it." Chief Washington nodded her agreement. "That's part of what we're discussing today. The psychological evaluation criteria have been completely overhauled." As the meeting got underway, Tiana observed the diverse group of participants with satisfaction. The committee included longtime residents, business owners, clergy members, educators, and police representatives. Every voice was heard, every concern addressed. This was what meaningful community engagement looked like. The discussion was sometimes heated but always productive. When disagreements arose, Judge Rivera skillfully mediated, ensuring all perspectives were considered. Officer Bryant presented the proposed training protocols, which emphasized de-escalation techniques and cultural competency. Community members offered feedback, which he noted without defensiveness. "Before we conclude," Chief Washington said as the meeting neared its end, "I wanted to share something significant. Former Officer Wilson has requested to address this committee at next month's meeting." A murmur ran through the room. Tiana felt her heart rate quicken. "For what purpose?" Dr. Johnson asked, his tone carefully neutral. "He says he wants to apologize," Chief Washington replied, "and to share his perspective on how bias takes root within the department. He's been undergoing counseling and bias training since his termination." "And Daniels?" Judge Rivera inquired. "Still fighting his dismissal," Chief Washington said with a slight frown. "He's shown no remorse or acknowledgement of wrongdoing." Tiana listened to the ensuing discussion with mixed emotions. The committee members debated whether allowing Wilson to speak would be productive or merely performative. Some argued that hearing from a former officer who had recognized his biases could be valuable. Others worried it would center the narrative on redemption rather than accountability. "What do you think, Tiana?" Mrs. Chen asked finally. "It was you he mistreated. Your opinion should carry significant weight." All eyes turned to her. Tiana took a moment to gather her thoughts before responding. I think growth requires the opportunity to make amends, she said slowly. Not for forgiveness necessarily, but for the chance to contribute to repair. If he's genuinely changed, his insights could be valuable for preventing others from going down the same path. The committee ultimately decided to allow Wilson 10 minutes at the next meeting, with the understanding that it was a privilege that could be revoked if his approach seemed insincere. After the meeting concluded, Tiana's father drove her home, the car filled with comfortable silence for several minutes before he spoke. That was a mature perspective you offered today, he said. About Wilson? Tiana gazed out the window at the familiar streets of their neighborhood. I've been thinking a lot about the cycle, how hurt people, how systems perpetuate themselves. Breaking that cycle requires creating space for change. Dr. Johnson glanced at his daughter with pride. When did you get so wise? I had good teachers, she replied with a small smile. At home, Tiana found an envelope addressed to her in the mail. The return address was from a prestigious national civil rights organization. Inside was a formal invitation to speak at their annual youth leadership conference, along with information about their college scholarship program. Mom, she called out, excitement bubbling in her voice. Look at this. Mrs. Johnson emerged from her study, reading glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed the invitation with growing delight. This is an incredible opportunity, Tiana, and that scholarship could make a huge difference for college. Tiana nodded, already imagining herself addressing a room full of young activists from across the country. 3 months ago, she had been just another high school student with ordinary concerns. Homework, friends, extracurriculars. Now she was being invited to share her experience and insights on a national platform. I'll need to write a speech, she mused, mind already racing with ideas. You'll be brilliant, her mother assured her. Just speak your truth as you've been doing. Later that evening, as Tiana worked on homework, her phone buzzed with a notification from the local news app. She tapped on it and found herself looking at a familiar face, Officer Wilson, or rather former Officer Wilson. He had given his first public interview since his termination. With trepidation, Tiana played the video clip. Wilson looked different somehow, humbler, his former arrogance absent. He spoke directly to the camera. What I did was wrong, he began without preamble. I racially profiled a young woman who was simply walking home. I treated her with suspicion and disrespect based solely on the color of her skin. There's no excuse for that. Tiana listened, surprised by his directness. I grew up in a bubble, Wilson continued. My family, my friends, my colleagues, all reinforcing certain views about who belongs where, who deserves what. I never questioned it until I was forced to, until I lost my job, my identity as a police officer, and had to really look at who I'd become. He went on to describe his journey over the past months, the counseling, the racial bias training, the conversations with community members who had shared their experiences of discrimination. He spoke about the shame he felt watching the body cam footage, hearing his own words, seeing his actions through others' eyes. I can't undo what I did, he concluded, but I can dedicate myself to making sure other officers don't make the same mistakes. That's why I've started speaking to police cadets about bias, sharing my story as a cautionary tale. It's not about redemption, it's about responsibility. When the clip ended, Tiana sat quietly, processing her feelings. There was something powerful about hearing such a direct acknowledgement from one of the officers who had caused her so much distress. It didn't erase what had happened, but it offered a kind of closure she hadn't realized she needed. The next day at the community center, Tiana participated in a youth leadership workshop she had helped organize. Teenagers from across the city gathered to learn about civic engagement, community organizing, and advocacy. Many had their own stories of encounters with law enforcement, some positive, many not. What made the difference in your case? Asked a quiet girl named Danny during the Q&A session. Why did people listen when they've ignored so many others? It was a question Tiana had wrestled with herself. The unfairness of it troubled her, that her story had gained traction when countless similar incidents had been dismissed or forgotten. Timing, technology, and testimony, she answered honestly. The drone footage and body cam videos made it impossible to deny what happened. The neighbors who witnessed and recorded the encounter added their voices to mine, and the community was already primed for change after years of unaddressed complaints. She paused, considering how to express the deeper truth. But it shouldn't take all that. One person speaking up should be enough. That's why we need to amplify each other's voices, to create systems where every story matters, not just the ones with viral videos. The workshop continued, with the participants breaking into small groups to develop action plans for issues they cared about in their own communities. Tiana moved between groups, offering guidance and encouragement. These young people inspired her with their passion and commitment. As the workshop concluded, Tiana noticed a new face at the back of the room, Zoe Bryant, Officer Bryant's daughter. She had been an unexpected ally over the past months, providing insights into the police department's internal culture that had proven invaluable. "I didn't know you were coming today," Tiana said, approaching her. Zoe smiled. "I wanted to see the workshop in action. It's impressive what you've built here." "We've built," Tiana corrected her. "Your input has been crucial. My dad wanted me to tell you that the first class of cadets trained under the new protocols graduates next week," Zoe said. "He's hoping you'll come speak to them. Share your perspective directly." Tiana hesitated. Standing before a room full of soon-to-be police officers was a daunting prospect. But it was also an opportunity to influence how they would approach their roles in the community. "Tell him I'll be there," she decided. The following week, Tiana stood at the podium in the Police Academy auditorium, facing rows of cadets in their crisp uniforms. Officer Bryant had introduced her with respect and warmth, emphasizing the importance of hearing directly from community members. "Thank you for the invitation," Tiana began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm here today not to rehash a single incident, but to talk about something more fundamental, the relationship between police and the communities they serve." She spoke about trust, how it was built through consistent, respectful interactions, how quickly it could be broken, how painstakingly it had to be rebuilt. She shared stories from her neighbors and friends, illustrating the ripple effects of both positive and negative encounters with law enforcement. "The badge you'll wear carries both authority and responsibility," she told the cadets. "How you use that authority will define your legacy. Will you be known as someone who made your community feel safer, more valued, more heard? Or will you be remembered as someone who made them feel threatened, marginalized, silenced?" She concluded by inviting them to join the Community Safety Committee meetings, to become part of the ongoing dialogue, rather than positioning themselves apart from or above the community they served. As she finished, the cadets rose in a standing ovation. Many approached her afterward, sharing their own backgrounds and motivations for joining the force. Their eagerness to engage gave her hope. Former Officer Wilson was there too, now working as a civilian consultant on bias training. He waited until the crowd around Tiana had thinned before approaching. "Thank you for allowing me to be part of the committee meeting next week," he said, his demeanor respectful, but not obsequious. "I know it can't have been an easy decision." "It wasn't," Tiana acknowledged. "But necessary change often isn't easy." Wilson nodded. "I've been following your column. Your perspective it's helped me understand things I was blind to before." "That's why I write it," Tiana replied. "Not just to document what's happening, but to build bridges of understanding." As she left the academy, Tiana reflected on the journey of the past 3 months. The changes in her community were real and significant, though still fragile and incomplete. The changes in herself were equally profound. She had discovered her voice and learned how to use it effectively. She had experienced both the weight of being a symbol and the power of being a catalyst. That evening, Tiana arrived home to find an unexpected visitor in the living room. Chief Washington sat with her parents, deep in conversation that paused when Tiana entered. "There she is," the chief said, standing to greet her. "I just came from the academy. Your speech made quite an impression." "Thank you," Tiana replied, setting down her backpack. "I wasn't sure how it would be received." "Honestly," Chief Washington said with a small smile, "I think some of the cadets were expecting a lecture on everything wrong with policing. Instead, you gave them a thoughtful perspective on building community relationships." It resonated. Tiana's father gestured for her to join them. Chief Washington came by to discuss something important. "The mayor has asked me to establish a youth advisory council for the police department," the chief explained. "A formal channel for young people to provide input on policies and initiatives that affect them. I'd like you to help lead it." Tiana blinked in surprise. Me? You've demonstrated exceptional leadership these past months, Chief Washington said. You're thoughtful, articulate, and you've earned respect across different segments of the community. Plus, you have first-hand experience with how police interactions can go wrong, and insights into how they can improve. We told the chief you might need some time to consider, Mrs. Johnson added. Tiana nodded gratefully, mind already racing with possibilities. Who else would be involved? That's partly up to you, Chief Washington replied. We want diverse perspectives, different neighborhoods, backgrounds, experiences, young people who can speak to various challenges and opportunities in police-community relations. I'd like to help, Tiana decided. But I have one condition. Chief Washington raised an eyebrow. Which is? Complete transparency. The council's recommendations, the department's responses, all of it public. No closed-door decisions, the chief smiled. I expected nothing less from you. Agreed. After Chief Washington left, Tiana sat with her parents in the kitchen, picking at the dinner her mother had prepared. You've taken on a lot, her father observed. School, your column, the community committee, now this youth council. Are you sure you're not spreading yourself too thin? Tiana considered the question seriously. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, she admitted. But then I remember that day, how helpless I felt, how angry, how scared. And I think about all the people who experience that without the support and platform I've had. If I can help change that even a little, it's worth it. Her mother reached across the table to squeeze her hand. We're proud of you. Just remember to take care of yourself too. Later that night, as Tiana prepared for bed, she noticed a new email notification. The subject line read, "Thank you from another parent." The message was from a woman named Keisha Taylor, whose 14-year-old son had been stopped by police the previous week while biking home from a friend's house. The officer who approached him was kind and respectful, Keisha wrote. He explained why he had stopped my son. Someone had reported a stolen bike in the area, checked his ID, and then apologized for the inconvenience. Before your advocacy, before the changes you helped bring about, I doubt that interaction would have gone so smoothly. My son came home feeling annoyed but not traumatized. That might seem like a low bar, but for a black mother in America, it's something. Thank you for helping make our community safer for our children. Tiana sat with the email for a long moment, tears welling in her eyes. This was why she kept pushing, kept speaking, kept showing up, for the small victories that meant everything to families like the Taylors. She typed a heartfelt reply, then opened her laptop to jot down ideas for the Youth Advisory Council. As she worked, her mind drifted to the scholarship application for the Civil Rights Organization, due at the end of the month. Her essay would focus on community-based approaches to police reform, drawing on everything she had learned and experienced since that fateful afternoon. The road ahead would be long. Meaningful change required sustained effort, vigilance, and commitment. The reforms implemented thus far were just the beginning. But as Tiana looked at the silver bracelet she still wore daily, the gift from her neighbors who had stood with her, she felt a deep sense of purpose and possibility. 3 months ago, she had been a victim of injustice. Now she was an architect of change. The transformation hadn't erased the trauma of that day, but it had given it meaning. Her pain had become a catalyst for progress, her voice an instrument for accountability. As she finally closed her laptop and turned out the light, Tiana thought about all the young people who would participate in the Youth Advisory Council, each bringing their own experiences and perspectives. She thought about the cadets at the academy, preparing to serve their community with a new awareness of their impact. She thought about former Officer Wilson, using his journey as a cautionary tale for others. From a single incident had grown a movement, not perfect, not complete, but real and evolving. And in that evolution was hope. Hope that the next girl walking home from school would make it there safely, without fear, without harassment. Hope that the officers sworn to protect and serve would truly see and value every member of the community. That hope was both Tiana's burden and her blessing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to falter or to soar. But tonight, she could rest in the knowledge that she had helped bend the arc of her community's story toward justice. Not instant karma, perhaps. The work was too complex, too ongoing for such simple resolution. But something more enduring. A fundamental shift in power. In perspective, in possibility, and that, Tiana reflected as sleep finally claimed her. Was a story worth continuing?